Hello and welcome to Top Story. These are critical days in Burma where the military government is pondering how to respond to street protests that are threatening to sweep it from power. Truckloads of soldiers have surrounded monasteries in the former capital Rangoon in an attempt to stop Buddhist monks leading mass demonstrations. On Tuesday, thousands defied an order by the military to stay away from the protests or face the consequences. Confronted by similar popular opposition in 1988, the military didn't hesitate to use force. Some 3,000 people were killed in a wave of violent repression. But this time, the central role of Burma's Buddhist monks in the protests is giving the junta pause for thought. There are hundreds of thousands of monks in Burma, and the great respect in which they are held makes it very difficult for the military to take violent action against them. So how then is the Burmese military likely to act? Joining me now to answer that and other questions is Dorian Malovich, head of the Asia desk at the French Catholic daily La Croix. Thanks very much for being on Top Story. It does rather seem as though things are coming to a head at the moment, with curfews overnight surrounding the monasteries, reports this morning of monks being beaten. Is that how you see things?
Well, that's definitely the scenario that was expected. For a few days we just expected that the junta would start to put on some such steps ahead against the demonstration. They couldn't stand any more demonstrations getting bigger and bigger. So I think they started with the monks first, and they sent the messages to the venerables, the head of different temples and monasteries all around Burma, to ask the monks to go back to the monasteries. Some of them did that, but there is a younger generation of monks much more aware and much more considering the situation of the local people. The people, they come from families who are really have some difficulties, a lot of difficulties and hardship to live in a daily life, for food, clothes and work and even housing. So they are more ready to keep on demonstrating for those young monks. But even for the junta, the idea is to prevent as much as possible too many monks in the crowd. And now, but even with some monks,
We've heard today that there are some 500 monks marching in the centre of Rangoon.
Okay.
The question for me, I think, is: do you think at this stage that the military junta can keep the lid on this, or are things already so far out of control that this is going to spiral into much deeper violence, more extensive violence than this?
From what we know today, there hasn't been any shooting. It's okay, they are beating, they are arresting, and they are preventing people from going out. I mean, we don't know whether they started to block some roads from the outskirts of Rangoon, for instance, to prevent monks and people to go out. We have to know that the people, even though they have been living in a kind of fear to demonstrate and to speak out, even now we know that some Westerners in Rangoon, the people are afraid to talk to them. So they could be arrested just by talking with them. And now I think for now we can say it's under control just because they haven't shot on the people. I think.
But what's your reading of the situation? If the demonstrations continue, given your knowledge of the junta and the way they've behaved in the past, will they resort to extreme violence?
Yeah, I think as we know the junta, knowing the way they can react. Even though in '88 we know what happened, even though 2007 now it's not the same context, but the military are much more are better equipped. They have radio communication even better than in '88, and they would definitely shoot on the crowd. I mean, with no restraint. No restraint. I mean, we know that to keep the people, to keep the power and to keep the situation calm.
And in 1988, they didn't hesitate to open fire on crowds at all.
Even though they waited also for a few weeks before deciding to react and to crack down. And even now, we knew that among the junta there were some divisions among the generals, but as the Prime Minister...
We're actually seeing pictures of those demonstrations in 1988 and the crackdown.
Yes, exactly. They shot at the monks and at the people. And today, even though we know that they can manipulate, they can send civilian people among the crowd and starting, to make provocations to justify afterwards that they had to keep calm, to keep the city and to keep the country.
What do you think is really driving the demonstrations this time? What's behind it? What's brought it to the head?
I think, well, after so many years under dictatorship, definitely, and the huge rise of the prices in August, many people really don't understand why the junta decided in August like that, just to raise the price of gas and then the food also, and that was just the beginning. The first few days in August, that were some opposition leaders that started to demonstrate, then the monks followed, and then more and more monks, and the crowd followed after a few weeks. Looking at that, I mean, the junta decided what are we going to do? Is it manageable or not? And after a few weeks, you remember, for instance, even in another country, in Tiananmen Square, there were 7 weeks. The demonstration with students in '89, and everybody was just expecting the power is not that disagreed on how to deal with that, and we can guess that it's the same situation. But
I was going to ask you this: just how monolithic an entity is the Burmese junta? Are there cracks? Are there divisions within it?
Well, we know that within the junta there is the number 1, number 2, number 3, and the number 2 was preparing the succession, but the number 3 was chosen, to make it simply. And so the number 2 was, of course, not very happy about this choice, and that was exactly the moment. So that could be an explanation of this sudden rise of the prices in August, just to provoke a tense situation, and that's uniting all the junta, the top head. And so now, the more afraid that
briefly, any chance of a compromise at all? A deal, perhaps, with the leader of the opposition, Aung San Suu Kyi?
We might hope that a dialogue could start, but now, I mean, it hasn't started for years. So why should it start now? I mean, the junta is not ready to start any dialogue now. I mean, the Prime Minister in exile was in Paris and told me they never dialogued. Why should it start now? And we know that Aung San Suu Kyi we don't know whether she has been arrested or she's still in her house. But
we're going to have to end it there, I'm afraid. Thanks very much to Dorian Malevich of La Croix. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Top Story. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.